I'm trying to be more in touch with my emotions and more vulnerable about these things. And I guess Charlie Kirk's murder has brought that out in me. I think it was a really hard week last week emotionally because, it seems, and it still seems like Charlie Kirk was assassinated, murdered for speaking his mind politically, saying things that people didn't like, saying things that people have deemed hateful. And I like there's a lot of things that I say that people deem hateful. I've been canceled by a lot of people in the gender world for some of the things that I say. And, a lot of things that I believe are also things that people all over the political spectrum believe. But then when you say them out loud, certain leftists will say that you're doing it as a shill, like you're doing it as a grift, or that these are just right talking points and your audience capture. And it's like, I know because I genuinely believe those things on that list. And I know other people genuinely believe those things, even if some people who also are audience captured believe the same things that I believe on. What I'm trying to say is it's really complicated out there, and someone got shot who I don't think is as nearly as hateful from all the clips. And of course, I've watched more clips of Charlie Kirk since he was killed. I hadn't ever watched that much of him, just things here and there, but I'm not Gen Z. So I just wasn't big on watching his stuff. Occasionally it would come across my plate, and sometimes from people who didn't like him, sometimes from him in turning points. And some stuff I saw, I thought was gross or weird. Like I made a video some weeks ago about a weird, like, pro-life video that I thought was gross and awful.
Talking about how abortions are important because it takes babies out of the population. And I just wanted to say that by saying that, they are wanting to take out very important people. 4 years ago, I was by my father, and I chose not to have an abortion, and this is what came out of
it. But then I would, also see some clips that I thought that I agreed with, and I found him to be a little douchey.
Year-olds were put into a room, okay?
Right.
And they said, men, what do you think about when they're alone? No surprise, sports and sex, right? Young ladies, what do you think about in the room alone for 30 minutes just by themselves? They replayed prior conversations that they had. For the record, no man in the history of the species has replayed conversations that we had and thought about them when we were alone in a room.
Whoa. I think that you just lied that all men don't think. That's such a...
It's called a joke. I'm sure there's a man somewhere that recollected on a conversation.
Well, I didn't know that in a dialect that's a debate based on science and you're talking about a study, that would you implement a joke that's based on a
Yes,
truth?
humor is a tool of a rhetorician to try to get people, to chuckle, a little levity.
But maybe that's partly just because of maybe more of the clips that I saw from him were coming from people on the left who didn't like him, so they would share the more douchey ones. But he was killed seemingly because people didn't like his speech. And it, like a few days before that, a Ukrainian woman was killed horrendously, violently, and died alone, but surrounded by a handful of people in a nightmarish scenario. And I it's like we forgot about her, but I'm processing that, and then 2 minutes later I pick up my phone and watch someone be shot in the neck and throat or whatever, and it was just a lot. It was just a lot of seeing people who I empathize with being killed. And yes, I empathize with Charlie Kirk. If you're the kind of person who just can't take that, I'm probably not for you. And I will say, I have in the last several days, I'm recording this on Monday, and he was killed on Thursday, and I have lost more followers than I've gained on every social media platform, just speaking out that we should love each other and that we shouldn't celebrate murder. And I have gained also new followers. And even though, my numbers are much smaller than I don't have a ton of followers, but everyone means a lot to me. So those of you who have followed me in the last several days, I really appreciate it. And I'm really glad to have lost anybody who would unfollow me for the things that I've said. I'm really glad that they're gone, and I'm really glad for all of those of you who have followed me since. Because actually, YouTube is the one place where I think I'm on the whole up followers since then. It went down at first, and now it's going up. And I hope that anybody who watches me, hopes for the best for their country, for their fellow man, and for the world. And I've mentioned empathy, so let's talk about empathy. There's a quote going around as soon as Charlie was assassinated, before his body was cold, that talks about, and I'll put it up here, but it's, they have him saying that he didn't believe in empathy, or he didn't like the word empathy. And the implication on all these people's posts was, hey, he didn't like empathy, so why should we empathize with him or his loved ones, his living family who just watched him be murdered in front of them? Why should we empathize with him? And he deserved to be killed because he didn't believe in empathy. And it is really frustrating and just disheartening to just know that there are so many people who, in order to justify celebrating over a murder that happened an hour before, will not look up the context. Like, how do y'all not know at this point? How does anyone not get that one little quote is going to be out of context? That you can't just take the confirmation bias of the hate in your heart, or you've been told he's a bad guy, or you disagree with him on things, you want to dislike him, you apparently want to celebrate his murder, so you just decide, all right, look at that quote.
The word empathy, actually, I think empathy is a made-up New Age term.
So I don't have to feel empathy. And by the way, if you really genuinely believed that he didn't believe in empathy, the way, again, because we're going to talk about it, it's like a semantic issue and a political strategy issue that he was talking about. But if you genuinely believe this guy was bad because he didn't believe in empathy, and then your answer is to not have empathy for him or his loved ones, doesn't that make you just as bad as the guy you say deserved to be killed? Like, you're going to become evil to fight evil? Do you hear yourselves? You're literally going to the dark side.
Your hate has made you powerful. Fulfill your destiny and take your father's place at my side.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Well, I'll play the full clip here of what I can find that he said.
Communication strategy is not to do what Bill Clinton used to do, where he would say, I feel your pain. Instead, it is to say, you're actually not in pain. So let's just, very short clip. Bill Clinton in the 1990s, it was all about empathy and sympathy. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage, but it is very effective when it comes to politics. Sympathy I prefer more than empathy. That's a separate topic for a different time.
Now, as far as I can tell, there's not a video or an essay where he does flesh out what he was going to say. He kind of alludes to, we'll talk about that. Oh, like that's another point, right? Like that's another topic for another day, his empathy versus sympathy thing. And I do think it's not ideal to just kind of toss that out there, I guess, but he's talking a lot, and we all do that. We have tangents we want to follow up on, but it seems like he's talking, one, about the messaging here. Like, he's saying this whole thing of, oh, we feel your pain. He's trying to tell some people, hey, you're actually not in pain. Like, people are convincing you that you're in pain, or that you're a victim, or that your situation is really bad. Whereas, like, as my mom always said, if you have an attitude of gratitude, if you see the good things, if you realize your opportunities, maybe you don't actually have to be in pain. So that seems to be what he was saying with that part. And then in terms of empathy versus sympathy, I mean, this is one of these things, like, Brene Brown kind of changed the conversation and, like, told us all, okay, well, let's use empathy to mean when you feel something with someone, like when you can relate to them and feel their pain, versus sympathy is like when you feel bad for someone but you don't really relate to it. But these are complex issues when it comes to humans, because you can empathize with someone even if you haven't experience the same exact thing that they have, but maybe you've experienced something that overlaps. So you take that within you in order to feel their pain on some level. We also have mirror neurons. So when we even see someone's arm being hit, it hurts our arm. It hurts the brain mapping of our arm and like makes us feel it partially. And so the question of like empathy versus sympathy is always going to be an overlapping dynamic. And I think it seems like Charlie Kirk was saying that empathy, much like a lot of, as he says, new age terms or a lot of therapeutic terms, are sometimes used in a way, or sometimes weaponized, or sometimes used in a way that maybe isn't best. And I don't know to what extent I would have liked to have heard him flesh that out. But I'm sure I at least partially agree with him about sometimes people do weaponize a concept like empathy. Okay, my oven is preheated. I'll be right back. Like maybe he was kind of trying to say you don't need to relate to everyone's pain. I don't know. It really doesn't matter because this is clearly like a semantic issue as he was having. He's probably just annoyed with some aspects of therapy speak, like we all are. You know, like the term gaslighting has gone from a really useful term that helped us understand a kind of behavior that manipulative people will engage in to something that people now just apply to anytime someone says something that you don't think is true. Basically, you know, like people kind of, you know, OCD, it went from a clinical diagnosis that helped people understand a cluster of symptoms and maybe a dynamic that drove their minds. I was clinically diagnosed with OCD. Like this is, and then some people use it to mean they're a little anal or they're a little, they care about organization or, you know what I mean? Like these kind of things. So, but anyway, if you looked it up at all for 2 seconds, you would see he wasn't going, you should never empathize with people. Feeling other people's pain or trying to relate to people or caring for others or having compassion is bad. Like, you would have to be a cartoon villain, and it's a thing. It's just so many people are convinced these days because of, I guess, the bubble they're on and their social media, whatever media they take in, whatever their algorithms are sending them on anything online or in the people they're surrounding themselves with. People can get so convinced that people on their other side are like cartoon villains. And like people are human for the most part. I mean, there's a few sociopaths out there. There's some people who really seem to have sort of sold their soul to the devil. But for the most part, people aren't like, that would be crazy. That would be crazy if someone really was like, you should just never care for other people. Like that, to believe that, like if you really could believe that about someone that you've, especially if you've never really engaged with them. But that being said, I get it because potentially, depending on the clips that you've seen and what your political opinions are, I can see thinking that this guy really lacked empathy because Charlie seems like he's someone who is much more logic-based than emotion-based. And that's, he liked debating so much. And for a lot of people, especially people who are more like liberal in their temperament, feelings are so much more important than facts, right? Like that, not to be, and feelings are important. Facts are important, feelings are important. Much of what our lives are is feelings, and whether we're living, you know, pleasurable or nice or, you know, comfortable lives has to do with how we feel. So I think feelings are important. And I think Charlie was probably a little bit low temperamentally on the feelings and empathy scale. And so I get a lot of people just wouldn't like him. Y'all should read Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind. And he really breaks down like that there are like temperaments that lead to people being more conservative or more liberal.
Here are the results from about 23,000 American citizens. On the left, I've plotted the scores for liberals. On the right, those for conservatives. In the middle, the moderates. The blue line shows you people's responses on the average of all the harm questions. So as you see, people care about harm and care issues. They give high endorsement of these sorts of statements all across the board, but as you also see, liberals care about it a little more than conservatives. The line slopes down. Same story for fairness. But look at the other three lines. For liberals, the scores are very low. Liberals are basically saying, no, this is not morality. In-group authority, this stuff has nothing to do with morality, I reject it. But as people get more conservative, the values rise. We could say that liberals have a kind of a two-channel or two-foundation morality. Conservatives have more of a five-foundation or five-channel morality. We find this in every country we look at. Here's the data for 1,100 Canadians. I'll just flip through a few other slides. The UK, Australia, New Zealand, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, the East Asia, and South Asia. Notice also that on all of these graphs, the slope is steeper on in-group authority purity, which shows that within any country, the disagreement isn't over harm and fairness. Everybody, I mean, we debate over what's fair, but everybody agrees that harm and fairness matter. Moral arguments within cultures are especially about issues of in-group authority purity. This effect is so robust that we find it no matter how we ask the question. In one recent study, we asked people to suppose you're about to get a dog, you picked a particular breed, you learned some new information about the breed. Suppose you learn that this particular breed is independent-minded and relates to its owner as a friend and an equal. Well, if you're a liberal, you say, hey, that's great, because liberals like to say, fetch, please. But if you're conservative, that's not so attractive. If you're conservative and you learn that a dog is extremely loyal to its home and family and doesn't warm up quickly to strangers, for conservative, well, loyalty is good. Dogs ought to be loyal. But to a liberal, it sounds like this dog is running for the Republican nomination.
So if you are much more of an emotion and feeling-based person, you probably didn't like his debate style, but that didn't mean that he just had no heart. So what's so disturbing is that a lot of people seem to be in a state of such bad faith right now that instead of taking a moment to look up the broader context of quotes from someone on either side, then people are able to just believe the worst of people. And I'll make one of the first posts that I saw in the aftermath of his death was this one where someone's saying, hey, everyone talks about going back in time and killing baby Hitler, but now that someone did kill 31-year-old Hitler, you guys are so upset about it? I mean, haven't we been over this? Isn't there a song, everybody you don't like is literally Hitler?
Everything I don't like is literally Hitler, literally Hitler, literally Hitler. Everything I don't like is literally Hitler. Let's have a look and see. Comic books, Hitler. Comedians, Hitler. Capitalism, Hitler. Socialism, Hitler. Criticism, Hitler. Men's rights activism, Hitler. Sexual dimorphism, Hitler. Facts, Hitler. Donald Duck, Hitler. Manspreading, Hitler. Babies, Hitler. 4chan, Hitler. Science, Hitler. Gun control, Hitler. Statistics, Hitler. Milk, Hitler. Yeah, everyone I don't like is literally Hitler. Everyone except for me. Everyone except for me.
And that's so we're in this kind of what is it, Minority Report thing? This is a pre-crime. You've decided you can see into the future, and this guy was literally Hitler. And so therefore we can justify, this is a really dangerous sort of ideology or vibe or whatever you want to call it, if you can point to someone and go, okay, this guy is going to lead to a lot of people's deaths, and that's the thing that I'm seeing a lot of on the left is oh, this guy is such a hate monger, this guy is so dangerous, this guy, because his opinions are that trans is a mental disorder and that people should learn how to be happy and healthy and comfortable in their own mind-body systems.
Comfortable telling me your story?
I've known that since 3rd grade, and I'm currently 19, almost 20. I've known basically since then. I didn't start going by a different name until 7th and 8th grade. I just don't know with the whole medical stuff, what's true, what's not, what's helpful, because I've heard so many different opinions.
First of all, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm going to have an opinion that very few people will ever tell you, which is I want you to be very cautious putting drugs into your system in the pursuit of changing your body. Mm-hmm. I instead encourage you to work on what's going on in your brain first. I think what you need first and foremost is just a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Just someone that is going to listen to what you've gone through, listen to what else is going on. My prayer for you, and again, very few people will say this, I actually want to see you be comfortable in how you were born.
Yeah.
I know that you might not feel that way, but I think that is something that you can achieve. I think that with the right team and the right people, you don't have to wage war on your body. You can learn to love your body.
Or because he thinks that DEI is worse for everyone, including Black people, that means that he's going to lead to people being killed. And so because he's going to indirectly lead to people being killed, then we are justified in killing him now. That's really fucked up, y'all. I don't even, if you can't see why that's fucked up. And I don't know, I'm still waiting because I keep asking people to show me like the most hateful things he's said. When I ask ChatGPT, when I ask Google, it keeps giving me a list of stuff that's like, I'm like, none of this justifies killing him. None of this justifies that he was so bad that it's okay to dance on his grave, or that he deserved to die. So, maybe because people are flooding the SEO right now with things like, maybe it's harder for me to find anything truly heinous that he actually said. I've seen some things that I thought were gross, don't get me wrong, but like not to the level of, well, this guy should be killed. That's the moral thing to do.